You already know how icebergs work, so I'm not going to get into that. This is an iceberg made by Reddit user u/joke325 about the incredibly depressing post-punk band Have a Nice Life. If you haven't listened to the band, you should, they're great. I'm just going to get right into this. Death Consciousness. Death Consciousness is the band's debut studio album released in 2008. It is also their most popular album, and in my opinion, their best. The album is comprised of 13 songs, being 85 minutes long in total. The songs on it comprise a variety of genres, from post-punk to shoegaze to dark ambient, but the uniting characteristic of the songs on it is that they are all incredibly depressing, and deal lyrically mainly with the topic of death, as the title implies. The album is also quite lo-fi and low-quality at times, though this contributes to it in my opinion. This album is a great starting place with the band if you're looking to get into them. Arrowheads. The song Blood Hail off Death Consciousness has most of its second half taken up by repetition of the word arrowheads, 76 times in total. The song is about an Antiochian myth, more on them later, about a hunter who climbs up a staircase made out of all of humanity in order to reach God, whom he promptly kills with a flurry of, yes, arrowheads. Giles Corey. Giles Corey is the name of both an album and a project created by Dan Barrett, one of the two members of Have a Nice Life. Giles Corey has two full-length albums, a self-titled and Deconstructionist, as well as an EP, Hinterkaifecht, under its belt. The self-titled album, the project's most popular release, is an incredibly depressing folk/slowcore album with lyrical themes very similar to Death Consciousness's, namely death and depression. Most songs in the album are fairly sparse compared to Barrett's material with Have a Nice Life, mainly being driven by soft guitars and lyrics. The album is really good, probably my second favorite Have a Nice Life related album after Death Consciousness. The Unnatural World. The Unnatural World is Have a Nice Life's second album, released in 2014. The album is similar to Death Consciousness in style and genre, although a little less depressing, and it's also quite good, though I'd say worse than their first. Sea of Worry. Sea of Worry is the band's third and currently most recent album, released in 2019. The album is their first to feature a full band, as opposed to just being Dan Barrett and Tim McCouga, the other members' work. It's a fair bit more conventional and significantly less lo-fi than their last two albums, continuing the Unnatural World streak of also being lighter in tone, though not by that much. It's pretty good, but easily their worst, as seems to be the consensus among fans. Cheem's Dog Goes to Space. This is in reference to the video Cheem's Dog Goes to the Moon by YouTuber Twileft. I had no idea how to pronounce that. The video depicts the popular dog image Cheems going to space and then dying. The video was otherwise unrelated to Have a Nice Life, but the background music used in it is the song Earth Mover off of Death Consciousness. Antiochians. The physical version of Death Consciousness comes with a booklet that details the history of a fictional medieval cult known as the Antiochians, led by Antiochus, which possessed radical and heretical beliefs leading to their persecution and Antiochus' eventual death. The Antiochians' beliefs mainly were about similar themes as the album, as in how death is inevitable and life is awful. The booklet gets into quite a bit more detail than I could about their history, and is quite a good read if you haven't read it. Black Wing. Black Wing is another musical project of Dan Barrett's, with two albums released, Is Doomed and No Moon, both of which are quite good. The band's music has significantly more of an electronic influence compared to Have a Nice Life and Giles Corey, but does retain the quite depressing atmosphere of those two bands. Would definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't. Tim is a Teacher. Tim McCouga, one of the two principal members of Have a Nice Life, is a high school English teacher. The Death of Merit. The cover art of Death Consciousness is the painting The Death of Merit by 18th century painter Jacques Louis David. The painting depicts French revolutionary John Paul Marat after he has been assassinated. The painting fits very well with the album's dark tone. Robert Vore. Robert Vore is a fictional person who is described at length in the booklet accompanying the physical release of Giles Corey. Very similar deal to Antiochus. Like with Death Consciousness, the booklet gets into significantly more detail about Vore than I can, and it's also a great read. But in summary, Vore was a cult leader who spread similarly dour philosophical and religious beliefs to Antiochus, mainly surrounding death, including that the afterlife is a miserable experience comprised of viewing the world without being able to interact with it in any way, and other fun stuff like that. Again, I'd highly recommend reading the booklet for more info. Navaller. Navaller is another band by Dan Barrett and Tim McCouga, with this one being a very noisy and heavy semi-animated black metal band. The band only has one self-titled album, which is pretty good for what it is, but not something I'd readily recommend considering its harsh sound. Definitely an interesting project, though. 128 KBS. Remember how I mentioned Death Consciousness is a very lo-fi album? Turns out it wasn't originally intended to sound like that, but the original lossless masters of the album were accidentally deleted after their hard drive crashed, leaving only their lower quality 192, not 128, kilobit per second versions, which is what we have today. Better Questions. This is the title of a website run by Dan Barrett, mainly containing podcasts and articles on various topics, including self-help and business, among other things. It also contains a few other things, such as letting you book a call with Barrett himself to, quote, build super profitable businesses and super fulfilling lifestyles, end quote. Time of Land. Time of Land is a 2010 EP by Have a Nice Life, containing 4 songs, with a few of them having more of an ambient influence, and a few being more typical Have a Nice Life songs. It's a pretty good EP. Voids and Voids 2. Voids and Voids 2 were the titles of demo albums by the band, consisting of older, otherwise unreleased Have a Nice Life songs, including older versions of released tracks as well as new ones. They're both quite good and worth listens if you're a fan of the band. Enemies List's Christmas album. This refers to Santa Is Real, the Enemies List Christmas album, a 2012 various artist release by the record label behind Have a Nice Life. The album features the Have a Nice Life songs Guggenheim Wax Museum, Basic, and All Teeth, as well as the Giles Corey songs The Icon and the Axe and Just Like Christmas. Pretty interesting release. The Possession at Loudon. The Possession at Loudon is the title of a non-fiction book by Michel de Certeau about a witchcraft trial in 1634 in France. The book's cover is the source of the cover art of The Unnatural World. The cover of the book is taken from the 1961 film Mother Joan of the Angels, which is also loosely based in the Loudon possessions. Drive 2 soundtrack. Drive 2 soundtrack is the title of a 2012 EP by Dan Barrett and the Cruisers, which is actually just Dan Barrett. The EP's genre, unlike most of his other work, is synthpop, and was the inspiration for his exploration of electronic sounds in Blackwing. Dan's kids ghost wrote Death Consciousness. This is a joke entry not meaning anything. Dan actually killed God. This is also a joke entry not meaning anything besides referencing the hunter myth mentioned earlier. Stoned Soul. Stoned Soul is the title of a 2014 bossa nova album by Giles Corey, another musician with no relation to Dan Barrett's project. According to the creator of this Iceberg, this album was originally visible in the Spotify merch section of Dan Barrett Giles Corey, but it doesn't appear to be on there anymore. And that was the Have a Nice Life Iceberg. I hope you enjoyed and this influenced you to check out the band if you haven't already.